Recording.
Okay. We are now being recorded. Welcome, everyone. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the director of the CUNY Dispute Resolution Center. This breakfast is co-sponsored by the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I started these breakfasts after 9/11. Today is our 259th breakfast. We met in person at John Jay College in Midtown Manhattan until March 2020. Starting in April 2020, we began the virtual modality of these breakfasts, and for the foreseeable future, we will be continuing online since virtually all of our presenters are from outside of the New York area. I know many of you have asked if we could meet. There's only the potential of one between now and August that could possibly be in person. We'll let you know. All of these sessions are recorded. The recordings are posted at www.acrgny.org. If you go to that ACRGNY website, you'll see on the left-hand column, sidebar, at the very bottom, recordings. Click on that and you'll find all the recordings, or at the CUNY DRC website, and that is www.jjay.cuny.edu/dispute resolution, and you'll find them there as well. Each month, these breakfasts are put together by an amazing team of individuals from ACRGNY and the CUNY Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College. I'm so happy to be a part of this group with Julie Denny, Matthew Latimer, Nikki Borofsky, Emily Skinner, and Chloe Choi. This morning, we are so delighted to have with us Dan Simon and Tara West, who will be talking about their new work on self-determination. But before we turn it over to them, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Skinner, who will make a brief announcement about ACRGNY's upcoming conference, and she will then turn it over to Julie Denny, who will introduce our speakers. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and take it away, Emily.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everybody. My name is Emily Skinner. I'm the president of ACRGNY, and I wanted to make a quick announcement for Save the Date. Our 22nd annual virtual conference will be May 30th to June 2nd this year. And our theme of the conference is the speed of need, and kind of exploring kind of time and space of how fast our field is going, where are we going? And so it's really inviting different types of sessions to explore the different parts of conflict resolution, how some issues and conflicts require us to act with urgency, while others demand kind of a steady and deliberate pace, and how do we navigate that as practitioners? And so our call for proposals is now open, and so we invite you to submit and share with our community, the work that you're doing, the research that you're doing, things that you're interested in. And so I will put the link in the chat, and this is a virtual conference, and so of course we're inviting people from the greater New York area, but also nationally, globally, to share your knowledge with ACRGNY. And so thank you so much for being here this morning, and I would love to kind of pass it over to Julie.
Thanks a lot, Emily. I'm thrilled to introduce both Dan Simon and Tara West. Both of them are fellows of the Institute for Conflict Transformation, which is an important factor in their presentation today. Dan is also a board member of the Institute, and he's practiced and taught mediation since 1996. He's licensed to practice law since 1992 in Minnesota. He's past chair of the ADR section of the Minnesota State Bar Association and served for 6 years on the Minnesota Supreme Court's ADR Ethics Board. He has written a chapter in Transformative Mediation, a source book, and he's co-authored a chapter in the Mediation Handbook. He practices and teaches transformative mediation in Minnesota and in Southern California. Tara West is the author of The Mediator's Approach, 5.5 Paths Through Conflict, and co-author of Self-Determination in Mediation, The Art and Science of Mirrors and Lights. She's taught and developed undergraduate and graduate psychology courses covering such topics as sociocultural approaches to psychology, developmental psychology, personality psychology, group processes, and the psychology of conflict resolution. Tara earned her PhD in social and health psychology from Stony Brook and her JD from the New York University School of Law. So Dan and Tara, you're on the air. Take it away.
Julie, thank you so much. I also just need to acknowledge that Julie is an old friend of mine, and I mean a longtime friend of mine, and it's
a transformative mediator.
Yes, and so it's just great to see you. Great to be with this crowd. I mean, I'm just so thrilled from the preliminary chat that I got to participate in a little bit. What an interesting group of people, some of whose names I know by reputation, some of whom I don't know, some of whom I'm familiar with. What a great crowd. Just great to be here. Kind of overwhelmed by how awesome this gathering is. I also wanted to say that one credential that I didn't give you to read, Julie, and that I'm most proud of is my collaboration with Tara West on the book that is called that our talk today is largely based on. Tara, why don't you go ahead and start up our little slide presentation, if you don't mind? Appreciate it. Our topic today is something that I have no doubt many of you have thought very deeply about as mediators. And so I do hope, I'm looking forward to the end of our talk. We're going to try to get our talk out of the way so we can get to the interesting part where you all get to participate in the conversation fully. This concept is one that I suspect some of you have been involved in drafting rules about. I suspect all of you have thought about it at some level. Tara and I have devoted quite a bit of time the last couple of years, the last 3 years or so, to trying to take our understanding of what self-determination in mediation means to the next level. And I believe we made certainly felt like progress in my own thinking about it. I hope that you find that what we've come up with is meaningful to you as well. Why don't we go ahead and look at that first slide? Some of you, I do suspect there's somebody in this group who may have been involved in drafting this very document that we're going to look at. I'm going to read it aloud. Oops, there we go. Self-determination is the act of coming to a voluntary, uncoerced decision in which each party makes free and informed choices as to process and outcome. Parties may exercise self-determination at any stage of a mediation, including mediator selection, process design, participation in, or withdrawal from the process and outcomes. That definition is a start in an attempt that I believe we mediators have all been making to grasp this profound and nuanced and complicated concept of party self-determination. We have it on good authority that this definition was drafted by a group of people whose different perspectives all needed to be accommodated. That is, the definition had to allow for a broad range of practices, including by people who had a very different take on what it meant to support party self-determination. So we understandably are starting with a very broad definition that allows for all different sorts of mediation interventions. And Tara and I thought, okay, let's try to figure out why self-determination is such a big deal. And if it is such a big deal, what does it mean for a mediator to really commit to holding it as a value? Just a brief story about my origins as a mediator. When I was first trained to mediate, I was aware of self-determination as a thing that mattered, at least as part of a sales pitch that we would make about what mediation could provide. It was on a list of things that mediation provided, including such things as efficiency, low cost, avoiding litigation. Also, by the way, you'll get to have some input into what the outcome is. There's no judge here. So as a mediation client, you will get to be directly involved in creating the outcome. It was just on a list. It wasn't necessarily the main thing. And it was indeed my exposure to Bush and Folger's work that helped me decide that, okay, maybe self-determination ought to be the highest priority here. Maybe that really is the most important thing about mediation, the most important bit of potential that mediation has. It's that idea that self-determination really matters. And so why does it matter so much? And what does it mean when it's really fully supported? That's the whole thing that Tara and I tried to explore. Let's look at the next slide, Tara. I want to provide a variety of examples of just how broad the understanding of self-determination is, in the sense that one could have very different answers to the following questions. So Adam and Anna are mediating a parenting dispute. You believe Adam is threatening Anna with physical violence. You talk to Anna privately, and she insists that she wants to continue mediating. How do you answer that question about what it means to support self-determination there? I'd say there are at least two different extreme answers that would make sense, honestly. One answer is that simply self-determination is not possible for Anna, given that she is literally being threatened with violence. She is that's kind of as literal an example of coercion as you can come up with. Perhaps it is impossible for Anna to have self-determination in this situation. And so therefore mediation may not be appropriate in this situation. Another answer, which I believe is arguably true, is that the facts here tell us that Anna insists that she wants to continue mediating. That's Anna saying she wants to mediate. Perhaps this is in fact one of Anna's only opportunities to have some self-determination in this situation, if you honor what she tells you she wants, which is to continue mediating. So very opposite answers are possible when one is trying to decide what self-determination means. Another example, next slide, please. Johnny lets his lawyer speak for him throughout the mediation. Even when you ask Johnny how he's doing, he silently looks to the lawyer, who quickly responds. Okay, if I want to support Johnny's self-determination there, on one level, supporting Johnny's self-determination means he's choosing to defer to his lawyer. I have to honor that and certainly not do any probing of Johnny or pushing Johnny to speak up. He's communicating that he wants his lawyer to do the talking. That's honoring Johnny's self-determination. Another way to look at self-determination is, yeah, no, it ain't happening if Johnny's deferring to his lawyer. He's giving up his self-determination to his lawyer. Maybe I need to do something as a mediator that's more directive to get Johnny to speak up and get Johnny to assert his self-determination. Kind of opposite answers make sense. Another example, Tara, father and son have been in mediation for a year with no agreement in sight. The one thing they agree on is that you, their mediator, are intelligent and fair. Interesting story. I had this very situation, and it was my friend Tara West that talked me off the ledge of becoming an arbitrator for them. My thought at that moment was, well, it's not that complicated. They both have asked me to serve as their arbitrator. If I'm going to honor their self-determination, I should honor their request that I arbitrate. Obviously, there's an opposite answer that says, yeah, no, arbitrating is not honoring self-determination. That is the mediator making a decision, which has nothing to do about party self-determination. By the way, that's with Tara's help. That's where I wound up, that I couldn't arbitrate, but man, I was tempted, and they were going to pay a good fee for it too. There I was, a guy who had already been thinking about self-determination for a long time and deciding that it's the ultimate value that I'm into supporting. And here I was with a dilemma that I could have gone either way on and felt okay about. Confusing. I think we have one more example, Tara. Yeah, okay, so a clause in Bernice and Eric's divorce agreement mandates 2 hours of mediation upon the request of either party. Bernice requests mediation, Eric goes along with it, but Eric tells me that he feels coerced by Bernice's requests, and he fears the legal consequences of saying no. He doesn't feel like he has any choice. He feels absolutely like he is stuck, and he's going to get in trouble if he doesn't mediate. Do I go ahead and participate as the mediator when Eric is explicitly telling me he's not experiencing self-determination? Or do I go with the idea that Eric says, yeah, I have to, so let's do it? Do I interpret that as Eric's self-determined choice to mediate, and so supporting it means going ahead and doing it? Let me kind of segue into what helped us feel like we were making some progress in sorting all of this out. And it was Tara's discovery of a body of psychological research that she's going to go into some detail on, that really helped us get to the bottom of why self-determination matters so much. And then particularly, we'll talk about why it matters so much in the context of people being in conflict. Tara, why don't you take it away?
All right, thanks, Dan. So yeah, this research is known as self-determination theory, which is actually a theory of motivation that was developed by two social psychologists, Richard Ryan and Edward Deci. And what they did is they took research from a number of different areas: healthcare, workplace, education, and found that there were 3 basic psychological needs that seem to motivate people in pretty much every area of life. So I'll go through those one by one. And the first one is the one we probably would associate most closely with self-determination, and that's autonomy. And Ryan and Deci define it as a state where one's behaviors are self-endorsed or congruent with one's authentic interests and values. So basically, it's a need for alignment between our behaviors and values. So there's a psychological aspect. So there's more to it than just freedom from coercion or the ability to make choices. It's about wanting to make choices that we can feel good about for our own reasons. And then there's a flip side to this need, which is that we really do not want to be coerced or even persuaded, right? We value our autonomy so much that we want to feel like we're in control of our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own behaviors. And if we feel like people are trying to push us or pull us or manipulate us, we will dig our heels in and actually move the opposite direction from where we're being pulled, right? That's how important our need for autonomy is. But of course, we are not existing in a vacuum as individuals. We have social connections, social environments that mean something to us. So the next need is known as relatedness. And Ryan Deci defined this as feeling socially connected, feeling belonging, and feeling significant among others, right? So this is probably not a surprise, right? We know humans are social animals. Our close relationships with friends and family matter to us. But what might be a surprise is that how we interact with strangers actually matters to us too. And we can meet our need for relatedness by a positive interaction, even just sharing a smile with a stranger, having a conversation in a line at a store, or if a stranger helps us like bring a suitcase up the stairs or a baby stroller, which happens a lot in New York City, right? That can actually help us meet our need for relatedness. Not only that, but when we help a stranger, that can help us meet our need for relatedness, right? So if we go out of our way to do something nice for someone we'll never see again, that actually is serving an important need for us. We're getting something out of it. And this seems to be very ingrained. So I'm going to actually show a little clip. Let's see if my computer is nice to me right now. Are y'all seeing that? Excellent. Okay.
Oh. Oh. So. So. Einmal hier und einmal. Oh. Oh. Ah, ja. So.
All right, so that was toddler, but even non-human help. Oops. So. There we go. So cute. Okay, now I have to just make a little technical adjustment here to get back to the slideshow. Oops. All right, is that looking right to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as you saw from that video, helping, our desire to help is apparent in very young children and in animals. And so this suggests that this is actually hardwired. So it's really an important need that is, has been there in our evolutionary past. And there is actually a catch though. In order for our helping or connections with others to be meaningful and to serve this important need, they have to be autonomous. We have to voluntarily choose these connections, choose to help. When we are pushed or pulled into helping, that actually can make us and the person that we're helping worse off than if there had been no helping whatsoever. So we can't really just look at the needs individually, they work together. And there's a third need that works with the other two, and that is competence. Ryan and DC define this as the need to feel effectiveness, which is basically a fancy word for effectiveness, and mastery. Okay. So we have a need to master our environments, to solve problems, to rise to challenges, just for the sake of mastering those environments and increasing our skills. So video games, for instance, is a great example. If you or someone you know has ever spent a lot of time playing video games, you know that there really doesn't seem to be anything that we're getting out of that besides increasing our skill level, feeling that sense of accomplishment, rising to a new level. And this need for competence also seems to be hardwired. So when toddlers are placed in a new environment, they will automatically start exploring. They'll pick up any object or toy they can find and manipulate it. And there's just this desire to explore the environment. And then when toddlers don't do this, because it's such a basic need and such a common behavior of toddlers, that when they don't do it, we assume there's probably a problem there. Maybe there's a developmental issue, maybe there's an attachment related problem. So yes, so toddlers exploring is an example. Also animals. So rats will go explore mazes even when there's no reward available, and they will even subject themselves to the risk of pain by walking over an electrified grid to get to a maze just to explore it. And rhesus monkeys have been shown to do puzzles for absolutely no reward besides the joy of experiencing the satisfaction of solving a puzzle, right? So not only, and this is, so this is very ingrained in us as well. And so not only are we capable of solving our own problems, we are motivated to solve our own problems. So that is self-determination theory in a nutshell. And now Dan is going to explain how self-determination theory and these three basic needs relate to our experience of conflict.
Yeah, so these three basic needs are obviously a big deal and they run deep. But what is it that makes that especially relevant to us as mediators? Well, let's clarify that. If you've heard me talk before, you've done this little exercise we're about to do. I nonetheless, though I've done it many times, continue to find it meaningful, and so, sometimes I have a more recent conflict to think about. But I'm going to ask you to indulge me and go along with this little thought exercise. So, if you would please think back to the worst conflict that you yourself have been directly involved in. I'm not talking about where you were mediating, but where you yourself were in conflict with another person. And I'll be quiet for a few seconds so you can pick ideally the most intense one of those that you were directly involved in with an ex-spouse, a sibling, a business partner, whoever. Think of the worst one. And if you could think back to the worst moment of that conflict, Tara, I'll let you kind of zip ahead as I go here. I think you know how I do it. Worst moment of that conflict. And let me ask you this. What was so bad about that worst moment? How would you describe the experience that makes you say that was a bad moment? What was so bad about it? Typically, people answer that question, what is so bad about it? What's wrong? Why do you hate what's happening to you? In the following ways on the next slide. This is a typical list of how people describe why they hated being in that situation. The feeling has something to do with a diminished sense of control, a sense of being stuck, the sense of being overwhelmed, and that you just frankly don't know what to do. There don't seem to be any good answers. Also, a painful element of it is that there's another human being involved who's behaving in a way that you don't get. I mean, they've done you wrong and they're victimizing you and they are a problem. You may know that they have personality disorders and a lot of character flaws. There's something wrong with them, but you don't get it. I mean, how can they be doing this thing that is so evil or clueless or unacceptable? You don't get it. So some of you may start to recognize that we are describing transformative theory here. The next slide adds some more lingo that you may be familiar with. Transformative theory, as articulated by Bush and Folger originally in The Promise of Mediation, describes that the typical and most salient aspect of being in conflict or aspects are these two, exist on these, in these two categories. One has to do with that diminished sense of control or weakness. The other has to do with that sense that this other person is behaving in a way that we just don't get. And it's a little hard for us to cop to the idea that we become self-absorbed in conflict, but it is entirely understandable that at these moments when we are feeling threatened and out of control and like we don't know what to do, we don't have the spare energy, attention to pay attention to our fellow human over there, other than that they're a problem. It's just natural. It's part of the function of this transformative theory, by the way, is to help us let go of judgment of people who are in this state. This is a human condition. These aren't necessarily high conflict people. We are all high conflict people at times where we just can't muster the empathy for the person who is causing us this threat. It's natural, it's human. it creates a vicious cycle. I notice that I'm in a state of weakness and confusion. I'm paying attention to myself to try to figure out what the heck to do about it. I see the other person as merely a threat. I notice that, boy, I'm thinking some pretty harsh things about that other person. That's not normally how I like to be. Boy, this isn't the real me. Wow, this is confusing. Wow, I am a mess. I get in that vicious cycle myself, regardless of how the other person is behaving. The example I love to give of how this can happen is when I'm on hold with the cable company and they're telling me my call is important to them. And I've been on the call for 45 minutes and I'm thinking, I don't know, do I hang up? No, I can't do that. I'll go back to the line. Do I stay on here? I don't know how long it's going to be. Do I continue to pay this freaking bill indefinitely? I'm stuck. I got no good options. What's up with those people? What's wrong with them? Are the employees also evil, or is it just the corporation itself? Thoughts of violence come to mind. Thank God, rarely, but I know what it feels like to want revenge at those moments. And that's all they did was put me on hold, by the way, at this point. It's not about interacting and escalating with them even at this point. This is happening within me. Perhaps in the little thought exercise, you thought back to a situation where you were indeed interacting with somebody. And that's another element that tends to contribute to this vicious cycle, that when I start acting like somebody's a threat or a problem, they notice it and they feel a bit threatened by my acting in a way that suggests there's something wrong with them. They get a little bit overwhelmed and feeling stuck and not sure what to do. They naturally get a little self-absorbed and start to see me as the problem. It escalates. We litigate. We go to war. We have what the transformative theory calls the destructive conflict cycle. It's unpleasant. Let's go to the next slide, Tara. Why is this so distressing? Well, let's think back to the three needs that Tara articulated that form self-determination theory. The need for autonomy not being met in that moment. I'm stuck. I can't, there's nothing I can do. My need for competence. I don't feel competent right now. I don't feel a sense of mastery. My need for relatedness, heck no. I can't relate to this person who's causing me this much pain. This was kind of, I'd say, one of the central insights that I feel good about having us having come up with in this book, that we were able to link the interactional crisis that Bush and Folger described with self-determination theory that Ryan and DC described, and it helps illustrate why this vicious cycle of conflict, the interactional crisis, is so difficult. Thankfully, transformative theory and self-determination theory provide some pretty clear good news about what the path to a better place is. It turns out that we humans we know we have the need and the preference to have autonomy, competence, and relatedness. That's evidenced by the fact that we hate being in this other mode so much. That shows we don't like it. We want to be somewhere else. We have the motivation to make those sorts of shifts. Let's take a look at the next slide. And to put that into transformative theory, we have the capacity to move from weakness to strength, to get from unsettled to calmer, from confused to clearer, from overwhelmed to more confident. Those are known as empowerment shifts in the transformative theory. We also have the capacity on that other level to shift from self-absorption to responsiveness. We have the capacity to go from defensive to more open, from suspicious to more accepting of the other's good faith, from locked in our own perspective to being able to see the other's perspective. We do have the capacity to make those shifts, recognition shifts, as the transformative theory calls them. Let's take a look at the next slide and continue the kind of linkage with self-determination theory. Why is it so awesome? Why does it feel so good when we get to those that place of strength and responsiveness when we make those empowerment and recognition shifts? Well, in that place, these three fundamental needs that Ryan and DC identified are being met. We do get back in touch with our autonomy, our awareness that we have choices to make and that we can act on those choices. We become more aware that we do have some competence. We apparently are able to manage even difficult situations where another person is behaving in a way that's non-optimal. We can manage it. And by the way, we can even relate to that person a little bit. We can get it a little bit more. We can have little insights like, oh, I see. You were triggered by what I did there. Okay, I see. I can have just a little more openness and understanding of the other person. I think that leads us to the next phase that Tara's going to take charge of.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so given that people want to be in the virtuous circle and hate being in the vicious circle, what we do as transformative mediators is we try to put them in the best position to do what they're normally willing and able to do and get their needs met by taking care of themselves, treating others with consideration, and solving their own problems. And how we do this is essentially we are trying to use mirrors and lights to hold up mirrors and lights to the choices they've already made and to choices, opportunities they have to make choices going forward. So you recognize this from the subtitle of our book. And this is the metaphor we use to try to capture what we're trying to do, which is help them see themselves more clearly, help them see each other, the situation, and opportunities to make choices.
Tara, can I just, a point I should have made a minute ago, forgive me, but you know, the fundamental question of why does self-determination matter? Why is it such a big deal? Why is it not just one of the features that you can kind of advertise mediation providing, but in fact, the most important, most central thing that mediation can provide? This is why, because it is the thing that has the potential to address these three unmet needs and to transform the conflict to this better place. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nope, that's great. And this will all become clear when you watch a clip of Dan actually mediating a role play. So some of you may know Giuseppe Leone. He hosts the virtual mediation lab and he has hosted a variety of role plays there. And so Dan several years ago mediated a role play with these mediators, Lisa Jacobs and Ben Davies. And so I'm going to show you a little clip of that and then we'll talk about what Dan did. Just bear with me while I attempt to share this.
I don't hold anything against him. It's you that I'm upset at because I put my trust and my faith in you and you let me down. So, I respect John for what he does. But, I've got the figures here that I am more productive than he is. So I should have at least been presented the opportunity to apply for that foreman position, and I wasn't.
I mean, that's true. I'm not going to question your productivity. Okay, that's absolutely true, and I stand by that. I always will. Okay, just want to make you aware of that right now.
You do acknowledge that Lisa has been very productive.
Absolutely, one of the best.
One of the best. I wonder if it would make sense for me to, you've covered a few different aspects of this situation. Can I just kind of summarize what I've heard in case that helps clarify where you want to focus at this point? So would that be all right? Or,
yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So you talked about kind of the overarching question of the company's discriminatory policy or not. And Ben, you've stated that you do not feel the company has been discriminatory, and in particular recently, policies have been put in place where equality is an important priority of the companies. And you say that, as evidenced by the fact that 60% of the workforce is women, that goes to show that the company is not discriminatory in general. Lisa, you're saying that, well, yes, 60% of the company workforce is women, and in terms of management positions, your sense is that, in fact, women are underrepresented, it seems. And certainly in this particular instance of John being selected over you, that feels to you like an instance of discrimination.
Yes.
Another thing you both talked about is basically Lisa's performance up till this point, and you've both agreed that Lisa has been very productive. John, I think you said the best in terms of productivity, or one of the best.
Yeah,
Ben, I just call you John. Excuse me. Ben, you said you said that the best, or one of the best in terms of productivity.
Yeah.
And I guess there's no disagreement about that. You've also talked about kind of how it came to be that John, instead of Lisa, was given this promotion. And Lisa, you're saying that given your productivity, it really doesn't make sense other than that John's a man. And to the extent that John may have done some networking, to you, you see that as an old boys thing. They're out, whatever, drinking scotch and smoking cigars, and you were never invited to that sort of thing, so you didn't have the opportunity to do that. Ben, you're saying that the way that John earned this position was that he took a lot of initiative, worked a lot past his paid hour, past the workday. Did a lot of networking, that he took his own initiative, and you're saying that he made those opportunities happen. And you also say that from your standpoint, productivity is not really the criterion that determines who should have this job, but it's management skills. And your sense is that John was the person with those types of skills. And I'm not sure if there's something within that you want to clarify, or if there's another. One more thing that you discussed was your relationship with each other. And Lisa, you said that you had trusted Ben to basically be a mentor to you in the company, and you had sought his advice on how to advance in the company, and you felt like you had a relationship where you could trust that he would advocate for you, and would at least let you know about this opportunity coming up. And you feel incredibly frustrated that he has not lived up to that relationship. And Ben, you also acknowledge that the two of you have been friends.
I actually, coming back to that point, there is something I would like to add. I mean, Lisa, you said you got
Okay, bear with me while I get the slideshow back again. Okay. So, oops. Oh man. That was essentially an excellent specimen of a summary. And you might have noticed a few things that Dan did there. So what he was trying to do was just accurately summarize the conversation, not trying to be selective about which things he brought up, which things he didn't bring up. He wasn't trying to focus only on common ground. He wasn't trying to focus on the solvable problem. He was capturing the entire conversation as best he could. He addressed places where they agreed. So he noted that they both agreed that Lisa was a very productive worker. He addressed places where they disagreed. So for instance, whether the conversation was, or whether the company had been discriminatory or not, really just tried to shine purely a light on the different topics that have been discussed and their perspectives on each topic, which might be different from some of the ways that you've seen other mediators or that you yourself have summarized, even though we all often will summarize conversations. And you didn't get to see the whole conversation leading up to this. So you have to take my word for it that he used a lot of the party's own words and did not try to shy away from anything that might seem potentially provocative or negative. It was really just putting it back out there. And this is where Amir would come in that within this summary, where he's shining a light on the whole conversation, he's holding up a mirror to each party. So whenever he specifically talked about Ben's perspective, he just held up a mirror to Ben and said, so Ben, from your perspective, X, Y, or Z. And when he went to Lisa, held up a mirror to Lisa, and Lisa, you're saying blah, 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 right? So just holding up a mirror to each person. And he kept decisions in the party's hands. So you may have noticed before the summary even started, he said, So would it be okay if I summarized right now? And waited for them to say yes before he did it. So essentially at that point, he is shining a light on their opportunity to make a choice.
Terry, did you mean to be showing us the slides at this point, or because we're still looking at the picture of Ben? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did mean for you to be seen. Let me pause. Maybe I'll do a new share.
Go for it. Maybe I'll just make a comment. So what you're seeing here, we kind of jumped to the how of our idea of what it means to support self-determination, and what we've decided it means, and I can't wait to hear all your thoughts about this, is that in each moment of the process, we assume the parties are making choices, or at least have the opportunity to make choices. And so our role in supporting self-determination and really focusing purely on supporting self-determination is basically two things: to honor the choices that they continue to make in each moment of the conversation by being accepting and allowing space for it, and then supporting it by acknowledging it, by holding up a mirror to it or shining a light on it, and then supporting the idea that in the next moment, they get to make another choice, leaving space for it, perhaps checking in and saying something to the effect of, what would you like to do now? It's in a way a very simple, sort of meditative, returning our attention to the choices that are being made and the opportunity to make more choices. That is, that's our answer. And this is where I feel like we can't prove that that's the right answer about what self-determination means. I just think we have to take some responsibility, Tara, you and me, for deciding that that's our best guess about what true commitment to supporting self-determination means. It's that idea of the, Bush and Folger used the language of the micro focus on the moment of the conversation, and just acting consistently with our intention that you all are making choices, and that's cool. And you all get to make more choices, and whatever those are going to be cool. And here's more precisely what they've been. You said this, 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 and this. What's next? Yeah.
And are you seeing my slides now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I would never have known. Okay, so in addition to using lights and mirrors, what we are doing through using lights and mirrors, we believe, is helping people meet their basic needs. So for instance, Dan was helping them meet their need for autonomy by honoring and accepting the choices that they had made, right? He didn't change them in any way, which might have suggested that they weren't making good choices, right? And he's supporting their need for competence by giving them the opportunity to rise to this challenge, to solve their own problem, right? He's not taking over for them, trying to direct them in any way. He's allowing them, giving them the space to do what they need to do here. Also, the fact that they had communicated something and Dan had heard it and reflected it back is another way of potentially meeting their need for competence, because they had actually succeeded at that. They communicated something and the mediator heard it, at least. And as Dan had mentioned before, our need for relatedness is really under threat when we're in conflict. So in this case, in this particular case, they both talked about the fact that they had been friends, that they'd had a good, friendly relationship in the past. And so by reflecting that back, they got a chance to hear it again and possibly, feel a little bit of a renewed connection with each other. But even if they weren't in a place where they could feel a renewed connection, Dan himself, by non-judgmentally accepting that this is where they are, these are the choices they made, he's another human in the room that is potentially offering them a little bit of relatedness in that moment by not judging and not trying to control, but just accepting. All right, and then, so that's how it relates to the basic needs. And then empowerment and recognition, the vicious circle to virtuous circle are coming into play here too, almost by definition, as they're becoming stronger, clearer, making good choices, they're becoming empowered, right? And as they're empowered, they now have more room for the other person's perspective. And so as they're hearing everyone's perspectives again on the different topics, and they're doing it from a place of now a little bit more empowerment, the next time they're hearing the other person's perspective, they can perhaps take it in a little bit better than before. And so they can perhaps start to see the person as maybe not so horrible and bad and terrible as they might have thought, but just someone who's, you know, having this struggle with them, and maybe their perspective they don't agree with yet, but it's another person with a perspective who's maybe acting in good faith. So Dan, did you have anything else you want to share before we tell a couple stories?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the paradox that we're dealing with here. The question of what self-determination means is still kind of mind-boggling and profound to me, even after all these efforts to understand it. And it's this thing where I am claiming that I can have an impact on someone else's self-determination. Wait a minute, if I'm having an impact, then it's not all their self-determination. I'm doing something. Yeah, confusing. Well, and so that's where we wrestle with that and come up with the idea that I'm not getting them to have self-determination. I'm allowing, I'm supporting, I'm creating opportunities for. It's this weird thing where I do believe I can have an impact, but I've got to be very careful not to have a certain kind of impact that involves pushing. It's this allowing, and it's, again, it's profound. It's a big deal, and it's hard to articulate. It's at that place where that words don't quite capture it. It's something else. I actually heard, I'm sure all of you know Ken Cloak, and I heard him do a talk a month ago, and he talked about the magic of mediation. And I feel like that's what he was talking about too, this thing that is out of our control, but that cool things happen sometimes that we couldn't predict. And I think we're on the same page with him on that level, that we can't make this stuff happen. It ain't us that makes it happen. It is the parties that make it happen, but there is something that we contribute. So that's what we were wrestling with, and that's what we tried to articulate in the book by telling a lot of anecdotes, including many situations where I clearly screwed up and got pushy, and most often where it seemed counterproductive. And then these other dilemmas where it's just remains not crystal clear what it means to support self-determination in certain contexts. But that's what keeps it interesting, trying to figure that out.
Great. That's a great segue to our stories, because while we can't necessarily describe it, sometimes a story will show it. So I'm going to share a couple, Dan's going to share a couple, and then we're going to just have a conversation. That's cool with everyone. So two of my favorite stories are, so one of them is when a couple came to me, a divorcing couple, and they just had one thing they were trying to work out. They were trying to figure out the price that the wife would pay to buy the husband out of the marital home. And they started off probably about $20,000 apart. She was like in the 30s, he was in the 50s. And just through supporting their choices, mirrors and lights, they had a really good conversation where they were talking about, why they thought their number was fair. They talked about their needs and interests, why they needed a certain amount of money, why they could only spend a certain amount. And so they're moving closer and closer, but there were still like several $1,000s in between them. And then the wife just said, "This is it, 43,000. This is the final offer. It's all I can do. Not a penny more. It's all I can do." And so the husband said, "Okay, I'm gonna go get a drink of water." Gets a drink of water, comes back, and he said, "I feel called to tell you I will accept 41.5. And like the wife and I are both like a little curious what's going on. And I think I just, reflected it back. Okay, so that number feels good to you. And the wife was like, "Are you sure that that's the number?" He's like, "Yes, that's the number that feels right to me." And so I'm pondering this afterwards, and then I related it back to the basic needs. Something in him wanted to, I believe, choose the number. Like it felt better to him to choose a number than to go with exactly the number she said. And he wasn't going to be able to get a higher number. So we went with a lower number. That's one explanation. Also relatedness. He was demonstrating generosity to her. He was showing her, he was connecting. He wanted to end things on a good note. So that's my explanation. And I actually, when I told the story to Dan, he was like, "Yeah, I've seen that. I see that quite a bit." right, or things like that, which were not quite a bit. To me, the fact that you'd seen it at all, like that was my first time of seeing anything like that. So that surprised me. And then the second story involved two people who were coworkers and friends. They actually had started some sort of nonprofit together, and they had ended up like having such a terrible relationship that they were dissolving the nonprofit, or no, one of them was leaving the nonprofit and they were ending their friendship. And they actually had an appointment with a lawyer scheduled for sometime after a meeting with me to write up a no contact order, like that they were done. And so the one of them also had a long letter that she wanted to read to the other one. So she's reading through this letter. It's pretty hostile. The other one is pretty hostile in her response. And it's just what you would consider kind of a hostile conversation. And I'm getting in there and reflecting a little bit, summarizing a little bit, using some words I would never use in polite company, right? Just, putting a mirror and light up to it. And mostly they just like wanted me to stay out of the way. She really wanted to get through her letter. The other one wanted to respond. And at one point I just said, like, am I offering you the support that you need right now? Or is there more you need from me? They're like, no, just having you there is helpful. So for the most part, I'm just giving non-judgmental attention, just through my body language and my facial expressions, taking it in. And so after about an hour and a half of just what would be considered hostile conversation that in the past I might have wanted to tamp down on, after they got through the letter, it was just like, okay, so you'll take that file, I'll take that file. Here's what we'll do about this video, and just boom, boom, boom. They made all their decisions. And the next day, one of them wrote me an email to say that she had been worried about coming to mediation because she was afraid that I wouldn't let them do what they needed to do, and that clearly they had a lot they needed to say to each other, and that she said she slept well that previous night for the first time in months. So that felt good, that they knew what they needed to do and they did it. And that's my story that I'll stop with. And Dan, you want to share some stories?
No, I'm too excited to hear what everybody else has to say, but let me just say this thing and also, by the way, in our book, you can read I shouldn't say no end, but a lot of anecdotes. So if you want stories from us, you can get them there. But just the most meaningful generalization I can make about this radical commitment to self-determination and really deciding that, oh, that's the thing I support, self-determination, not settling cases, not people making good choices, people making their own choices. That's my thing. And the surprising results to me tend to be the ones where there is no agreement reached, but where I feel very comfortable and clear that, okay, these people have had a good conversation. These people have expressed where they're at and and I've seen them get clearer and I see their needs being met, and I see them deciding that they need to either go litigate some more or go think about things some more, but that is where they are at. And it's just kind of it's a more subtle sense of progress, than you get when people sign a deal, but it's real. It's like these people have had a meaningful interaction and now they're making a choice. And we have a legal system actually that's designed for people who have legal disputes that they want to take to that system. And sometimes that's a beautiful choice. And I've kind of come away with these non-settlement conversations feeling like, yeah, that was cool. That was a meaningful process. So that's kind of the most surprising shift that I've had from kind of starting out with the idea that my job was to get things settled. Yeah, so let's show them the next slide, Tara, in case they want more information from any of us. This first one is the nonprofit that we're both connected to that Bush and Folger started back in the late 90s. They offer kind of ongoing training and other resources, and now they are a membership organization. They're actually thriving, despite the fact that Folger is largely retired and Bush is slowing down a little bit. The organization continues, and there's a lot of action there. So I would love to have people involved with that one. You can see Tara's website where you can stay in touch with everything she's up to. My website is listed as well. And most importantly, on the next slide, would love to have you check out our book. Very proud of that. Would love to hear about it if you read it. Would love to continue the conversation both right now and in the future with all you. Very much appreciate you all having listened to us for this patch of time. Can't wait to hear what comments, complaints, accusations you want to hurl at us going forward. Tara, did you have any closing words?
No. I mean, you've summed it up. I want to echo that. It's really been great to be here. And thanks for tolerating some technical difficulties. Right now, I just hit pause share. It didn't give me a stop share. Are you all seeing my screen still, or what's happening now?
Still
It's
seeing.
still up.
Yep. Still sharing.
Interesting.
No way to stop share.
Just says resume or pause. Let me see about more. Does that give me stop? Huh. Oh.
How about resuming and then stopping?
Yeah, I know I tried that. Resume, and there's no stop option. I could leave the meeting and come back.
Does it really interfere? Does it really interfere with what we plan on doing?
I'd like to be able to see everyone myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, you know what? Can I just leave and come back? Would that be horrible? Although I'm not even seeing leave meeting as an option. I'm trapped. Oh, here we go. Stop share. It was hiding.
Boom.
There you go.
Okay. I moved it down. Phew. Okay. Great. Thank you again for tolerating the technical difficulties.
So would love to hear questions or comments. Happy to respond.
There have been a couple. I'll jump in, and everybody should kind of transition into their questioning mode, and feel free to correct or edit. But I just wanted to start us off with some of the questions that came in through the chat while you were both presenting, and thank you very much. And there's been a lot of praise as well. It's always nice to be able to review the chat and see, you know, how people were reacting in real time. But one of the themes I think that came through was something that might interfere with self-determination. One attendee said that she found that domestic violence victims might agree for a number of reasons that appear to be self-determination, but are indeed not self-determination. And then another participant noted that maybe identifying an unconscious bias against genders or women in particular might kind of shield or blur the notion of a true self-determinative process. I was wondering if you could both start by responding to those comments and questions.
Tara, I always jump in. Why don't you go for it?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, the one thought that came to my mind was, so we realized that one of the questions was self-determination vis-a-vis who? So self-determination vis-a-vis the other party, the lawyer, the mediator, and we ended up deciding that for us, all we can control is self-determination vis-a-vis us. They're going to be in all sorts of situations where they're going to have more or less kind of power, control, self-determination, autonomy, vis-a-vis all sorts of other people. And so we have made it kind of our goal to just do our best to support their choices, even if it means deferring to someone else. That's one answer. I have another answer on the bias issue, but I don't know, Dan, if you want to say more about that.
I love fairness, and I can't promise it, and I don't want to set up the expectation that you can rely on me to protect you. You can rely on me to pay close attention to you and support you as well as I can see what's happening and making your own choices, including getting an advocate to help you, including leaving mediation by all means. If you're feeling abused or mistreated in this process, absolutely no hard feelings. Take care of yourself. And it's not foolproof. And I may have been present as people have been mistreated, or it's just the sad reality that I can't control it. I only want to promise what I can promise, and it's my intention to support you in making choices. And there are risks and unconscious biases that I'm unconscious of that I'm imposing on you all right now. Sorry. To me, it's acknowledging my limitations is huge, central to this.
Yeah, and that reminded me of one more thing I wanted to add is that we also have a very optimistic view of human nature. So we believe that when people are behaving in bad ways or being attacking or dominating or the opposite, submitting, that this is just part of the vicious circle. These are just different responses to fear, feeling overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, seeing the other person as an enemy, and that when they're supported, they are more likely to actually come back to the place where they're in the virtuous circle and feeling good. So we don't assume that however someone is behaving at one moment is necessarily how they'll be the next moment, and think that the best thing we can offer is supporting them to get to their best selves.
One kind of bit of clarity I decided about my own process as a result of mine and Tara's conversations was because of the concern about domestic violence. I've decided that there is a decision I affirmatively make that if a party wants to speak privately to me, I will do that. That is as opposed to, well, it's up to the two of you. I'll do whatever you're both happy with. If unless you both want me to meet privately with one, then I won't. It was confusing, but I said, no, I'm going to go ahead and affirmatively say, okay, that's one choice that I make. Somebody wants to talk to me, I do it. And if I can help them do some safety planning or figuring out what to do to protect themselves, I'll do that. If that means that I can no longer mediate because the other party doesn't like that I've talked privately to the victim, okay, I'm out at that point. But yeah, that is so that's the occasional time when we came up with just, God, there's no perfect solution to this that totally honors everybody's self-determination all the time. I do have to make some calls. And that's one instance where I got clear that I had to.
Excellent. We've got a few hands up, but before we go in order, Harvey and then David, and one of them just went down. I wanted to jump in with a question that Jess Kent posted early on about how the value of self-determination might be in conflict sometimes with the mediator's ethical obligations. If you have thoughts on that, and then after that, Harvey, will go to you live for your question.
So my question would be, which ethical obligations? Like, I'd want a little more clarity there.
Jess, I don't know if you're on the call. Maybe we can put a pin in that and jump to Harvey while everybody gets more time to mull. Harvey, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
All right. Well, I love this presentation. I just want to say it's wonderful to see people grappling with the paradoxical nature of human behavior. I mean, this is really a wonderful thing. And all through this talk, I've been hearing Carl Rogers. This is extremely Rogerian, but it's bringing it up from a client and therapist position to mediation with more than one party, which makes even more of a paradox to deal with. But it's a wonderful concept, and I guessed the autonomy part right off, and I do groups in Death Cafe, New York City on Meetup, and that is primarily the biggest thing. People do not worry so much about their pain and suffering and all of that as much as they care about their autonomy, and we're starting to grapple with that on the level of how people can determine how and when and what they want to do about their death. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Harvey. I see David's hand. Is that where we're going?
Yep.
For an excellent presentation, excellent book. My question is the following. I teach this material and really appreciate the update that you guys have done. And often the response I get is, oh, a very polite, this is a great tool for my toolkit. I'll use it when I need it. Thank you. I know Bush and Folger are quite doctrinaire about that. They don't even want people to use other models other than transformative across all their cases, much less change within the same mediation. I've always felt that we can be more nimble as we mediate. I'd be curious as to your thoughts on that.
Go for it, Tara.
Okay. Okay. I mean, and did you have something you were going to say?
Oh, I got something too.
You go. You go.
So a great question. And, you know, I'm sort of doctrinaire myself in this idea that that's my thing. I support self-determination. I don't know how to stop doing that, because to decide when it's time to stop doing that already would be a deviation from doing that. So meanwhile, reality does impose a bunch of things where I've had to decide, okay, I got to do a little something extra here. Whatever I do that's extra is going to be with the intention of it being intended to, of it supporting self-determination. So for example, with a large group, I'll get a little bit more directive in saying, hey folks, here are some thoughts about how we can organize this conversation. We could take turns. Little compromises I make to reality that I can't necessarily justify, other than that I'm trying to deal with reality, and my intention remains to provide an opportunity for these folks to have the best possible conversation, which means one where they get to make all the choices. Applying that to different contexts does involve some little choices here and there, but I also stick consistently to the philosophy that what I'm trying to do is to support people in making choices. That's what I got. Tara, what do you?
I'll add a little. Just that, yeah, this isn't an exact science. So by all means, you know, people need to do what feels right to them. And, you know, we're not going to say everybody should do anything a certain way. But when it comes to the toolkit, one danger is that certain interventions or choices might work well in one context and not in another. So like the context of starting right from the beginning of, these are your choices. Before we even give any kind of opening statement, we would say, would you like us to say a few words about the process? So we are from the very beginning, putting choices in their hands, letting them have the experience of this is our conversation, owning their choices, owning the whole thing. So then when we do something like, you know, reflect a really harsh word back and don't try to control anyone's behavior, in that context, they're already experiencing the fact that these are our choices in our conversation. Whereas if you have in any way led the parties through stages or suggested that you as the mediator were in control, and then tried to bring in one of the interventions that does not offer any control, that might not work well. So that's just one danger to trying to use the toolkit approach with our particular ways of doing it.
Beautiful, Tara. One more point is that our self-determination matters as well. And so we have a variety of needs that we can't help but want to meet, and we get to. I had lunch with a federal mediator yesterday who had taken my course and who believes very much in this philosophy, but she explained to me that the expectations of the union rep and the management is that she do something a little more, that she provide a certain sort of structure, that she follow a certain procedure. And so, you know, my answer is that she has to manage those obligations that she feels with her belief that the most helpful thing she can provide beyond that is opportunities for them to make choices. And so she has to make some compromises, and that's reality. I also do some things that have nothing to do with self-determination of the parties, such as charge a fee for my services. That is totally, I don't get how I can justify that in my pure support for party making choices. That's me very much suggesting that they do a very specific thing that meets my needs. One example of a compromise I make, you know, those happen.
Excellent. There have been a couple people with their hands up. One of the questions that came in through the chat was, how do these values translate or overlap with different societies and cultures, maybe people in conflict who aren't American born, or cultures where there's a collective value that's very important? Sorry, I'm synthesizing some of your questions since there have been so many.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have something you want to say, or want me to?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, partly we think that this is actually more flexible to accommodate different cultures because we're following them So we're not imposing anything besides, yeah, this is your conversation. If they want to value the collective more than the individual, they both get to choose that. And if they have a difference about that, well, then we would support them in making a decision about where they want to go from there. But to the extent that people also want a different type of mediation, that like restorative justice or something that directly focuses on the community, then we would by all means like support them in using a different approach. But we do also the way we reflect and summarize. So if there's language, if they have different types of words that that they would use when we're using their words, we are, I think, being more supportive of their cultural choices.
And I feel like, and yes, it's not foolproof. And I do have, I'm from a very specific culture myself, the weird, quirky culture of one life that I've lived that makes me believe certain things. When it comes to a principle, I don't have one that's foolproof, but when it comes to my favorite one to rely on, it is this constant attention to party choice. Because to the extent that allows them to make choices consistent with their cultural, with their culture, great. To the extent that somehow it doesn't even become possible in my process, choosing to go elsewhere, again, not foolproof, but I think the best I can do in my role.
Excellent. I don't see any live hands raised. So there were another kind of string of questions about what happens when there's law that is clear and must be applied, or when the parties are really seeking or potentially expecting the mediator to push back on some elements of what's been said. How do you address those kinds of opportunities in the self-determinative modality?
I relate very much to that challenge of the parties expecting me to push back, lawyers coming in with the idea that, okay, we got to make our case strong because then the mediator is going to try to talk us out of it. And so we got to start with our position. And again, it's not foolproof what I do other than to let them know I'm not going to push back on what you're saying. I certainly will support a conversation where the other side, the other lawyer, who, by the way, has been thinking a lot about pushing back, will have the opportunity to say what he wants to say too. And so I assume that's actually a more effective way for that to happen than me pushing back. But to the extent they come in with the expectation, no, we gotta take a strong position to resist the mediator, and hopefully the other side won't resist the mediator as effectively as we do, and that'll bring it closer to us. If that's where they come in with and they're stuck there, I can't promise to help them do something different. All I can do is be as transparent as possible about what I'm going to provide. The law often is kind of easy for me to disregard. I'm just so aware that it's always open to debate what the law says, and it's not my place to have an opinion about it. And so it's kind of easy for me. That one's not as troubling for me. Like I don't know what the law is. Nobody asked me. If they did, I can't tell them. But you're saying the law is very clear here, sir. Okay, I see. Oh, you're saying you disagree. Okay. That's what I do.
And I'll just add one thing is that if we were drafting an agreement and needed to be more concerned about that, like a separation agreement or something for people divorcing, then there might be something about child support that we'd want to, but that would be like a slightly different role. And we do address that in the book, that what do you do when you have that second role of like a drafting attorney? And then you might need to wear your drafting attorney hat, and you might need to talk about the law a little bit, but we generally don't do that. And if they need legal counsel, then they would get that from somewhere else.
Excellent. There was another couple of questions about self-determination in the context of a court-related or mandated mediation, both in the sense of how do you honor self-determination when the mediator or mediators have to be chosen from a small kind of panel of individuals that have been pre-qualified, that really limit the scope of the choice of the parties. And then another kind of concern along the same lines is how do you honor the value of self-determination when you know that the result is going to be, if this doesn't progress and reach settlement, it's going to be kicked back to the court process.
So I think I had one, I was trying to think of when I was hearing the beginning of the question, if it was about the role of kind of the administrative body as opposed to the mediator themselves, because you were saying, what if the parties don't get to choose the mediator?
Yeah, I think this was a more, I think, a concern. It seemed to the questioner that I'm interpreting, and if you'd like to jump in if they're still on, is if you have a real select group of mediators to choose from, how do you, I guess, how do you honor the self-determination of the parties when there's already a kind of an administrative set of criteria that need to be followed in the process?
Yeah.
Dan, are you understanding that a little bit better, or do you have a good response to that?
I have a response. There is the reality of these other processes, procedures that people are subject to, and that they will likely have to deal with, if they don't settle this thing in mediation. And I again, it's the limitations. I wish for freedom for all of us from silly bureaucratic problems and authoritarian things being imposed on us from above. And I've got a tiny little role that I try to fulfill well, which is, shine a little light and hold up a mirror to the opportunity that people have to make choices when I'm with them. Again, I think it's accepting the limits of my powers largely. That's what I got.
Yeah, and then I do want to address the second part of that had to do with, like, if we know that if they don't reach a settlement, it's going to be kicked back to the court. So, so part of it is the court necessarily bad? That's one question. It's like, if that's where it needs to go, it needs to go. But then the other thing is, even if they don't settle it in the moment with us, we don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes afterwards in the lobby. So and even if they do reach a settlement, we don't know if it's going to fall apart. So I think our thinking is, if we support their choices, they'll be in the best position to find a settlement if there's one that's available that's better than the court alternative. And they can always change, find a settlement later. So not being too attached to the idea that a settlement in the mediation session with us is the most important outcome.
Yeah. I love it that we can sometimes be a part of awesome things happening, including empowerment shifts, recognition shifts, settlements of lawsuits. It's great. And I often have no way of knowing for sure what my impact is. And I'm pretty sure that I haven't succeeded at transforming our culture or curing the ills of the world yet. I've done a little, I've helped contribute to some nice moments between some people that have led to some good things. Again, it's me letting go of, I feel like so much harm is done by people trying to do good beyond what they really can control. And so I don't want to be one of those guys,
So I'm going to let Marianne from Georgia ask her question live now. Marianne, can you unmute yourself?
So my question is really focused on, entities that send out a request for proposals or request for quotations to hire mediators to do work for them. And I recently, this actually happened last year. I applied for a contract. There was a stipulation that they were looking for this, one of the requirements, which I felt limited people, professionals from underrepresented populations. So I didn't address it last year, but it came up again this year when I tried to apply again or put in a request for proposal. And I noticed that it was there again. So this time I challenged it. So my question is, the issue of self-determination is people being able to select their own mediators. What I noticed about a lot of government entities is that they have a very small panel of mediators and they actually assign the cases. And I think it was Adriel also put a comment in there where they just assign mediators. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that and what could possibly be done to try to make sure that barriers aren't put up for certain populations.
Do you mind sharing, Mary Ann, what the barrier, what the requirement was that felt like
Yeah,
it?
so I'll give you an example. So one of the things is said that you had to have either a master's degree, excuse me, it said you don't have to have a law degree, but you have to have a master's degree. Okay. So I've been mediating since 1995. I felt like, you don't necessarily have to have those things. You just have to have knowledge in that particular area of specialization, which I happen to have.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the mediators that they selected were all attorneys. There were 3 attorneys that were selected, and they were all male. There were 3 people who did not get contracts. All of them were women. So that's why I challenged it.
I just want to share with your sentiment that that's counterproductive and unfair and not helpful. And one little thought that comes to mind is one of the credentials of mediators that I'm a fan of. Of course, this is all my bias talking because it's a credential I have. But I like how the Institute for the Study of Conflict Transformation does their thing. There's no requirement of any sort of educational background. There is the requirement that you demonstrate some competence as a transformative mediator by submitting a video, and to me, that's the sort of competence that matters. And these other things, I agree with you, are discriminatory and unfair. I'm afraid I haven't had any particular success at having an impact on changing those structures myself. Tara, I don't know if you have anything on that topic.
No, I don't have anything else to add on that. It's too bad. I'm sorry that happened to you.
It's
And
fodder for.
I think one solution would be to educate procurement officers, because I don't think many procurement officers understand the work that we do. And so I think it might be helpful to get some of them educated on exactly what it is we do, and what skills are necessary, and maybe requiring having past experience in that particular area of specialization should be sufficient. If you're doing the work, I'm doing the work in 3 different states. So if you're doing the work in other places, and you have references there, that should be sufficient.
Thank you. By the way, that reminds me that, in this format where Tara and I have been talking, and you guys are presenting these things as questions, also feel free to present some answers, everybody. If you got some answers, I got questions, but
And this is always great fodder for new ideas for additional roundtable breakfasts. So thank you everybody for sharing in the chat, and anything we don't get to, we can always try and follow up afterwards. But we have about 3 or 4 minutes until the hour mark. And there was one question that came in asking if you notice any differences using this model in online versus in-person environments. So I'll hand that to you as the last question we're going to take in the official time, and then we can see if you're available to stay on a little later, perhaps.
I noticed that I would rather be in person with people personally. I know that my own preference and sense of connection is enhanced by being in the same room with people. I'm afraid I haven't done a systematic enough or rational enough study of comparing the different modes, and I basically have the assumption that the more communication that people voluntarily choose to participate in, the better. And if online is how it's going to happen, then that's how it's going to happen. That's been my attitude.
Yeah, and I have heard people say that some people do prefer online because it gives them a little space, like they have a little more sense of safety or distance from the other person's energy if there's a lot of hostile energy, whereas other people feel like there's more room for connection when it's in person. But I've had things go well either place and things not go well either place.
That's great. As with many answers, it depends, right? Maria, I wanted to kick it over to you to just have a few closing words and thank you.
Can't thank you. Excuse me. Can't thank you enough. As we have seen from the chat, there are lots of thoughts, compliments, and questions. One that's come up is whether you would be willing to share your slides.
Yes.
Was that, yes, okay. We also post those just so that you know that they would be as part of the collection of materials that we make available. Is that okay?
Yeah, just share the, of course, you'll share the profits that you make from using those. And, just send us the check. It's fine.
We're going to encourage everyone to buy your book. Hopefully there'll be a lot of sales after this event. Thank you so much. We're so appreciative of you taking the time to share your thoughts, your experiences with us. And with that, we are going to turn off the recording. We will be here for no longer than 15 minutes till 10:15 for anyone who wants to hang out and continue the informal chat. But for now, we are formally adjourned, and next breakfast will focus on mediators working alongside police officers in Dayton, Ohio, and they are transformative mediators there who actually have a mediation response unit that responds to 911 calls that don't involve violence. So for those of you who are interested in seeing some of the new iterations of our value as mediators, make sure you come next month. Okay, Nikki, can you turn us
All
off?
right. Hope to see everybody again next month.